Hey guys, tonight we step into a place where the walls whisper, the windows never open, and the people who check in rarely check out. You're not a tourist here, you're the main act. It's the year 1882, and you're about to be admitted to a Victorian asylum, not as a doctor or a visitor, but as a patient. And not because you screamed in the street or danced under a full moon, but maybe just because you dreamt too much, or you cried when you shouldn't have. You won't believe this, but back then, it didn't take much. A little melancholy, a touch of poetry, or heaven forbid, you talked back to your husband. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you're tuning in from tonight. Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You sit hunched inside the jolting carriage, knees knocking, wrists loosely tied with a coarse hemp rope. The city behind you is vanishing under mist. Ahead, something looms, a black iron gate stretching taller than any fence should. Your driver doesn't look at you. No one has for hours. You haven't eaten since morning. Not that you could. That nervous churn in your stomach has been swirling since they told you you'd be taken somewhere for rest. The carriage slows with a squeal. Gravel crunches under wheels, and then, a sound you won't forget, the metallic shriek of the gate swinging open. It's not welcoming, it's not warning, it's just old. Too old. The arch overhead says Royal Bethlehem Hospital in crumbling stone. Locals call it Bedlam, a name that used to mean chaos. Soon you'll understand why. Two attendants in grey wool uniforms approach. One holds a small clipboard, the other holds something heavier, just in case. You step out. The sky spits light drizzle on your face. You're asked your name. You whisper it. He writes it down, pauses, then scratches it out. From here on, you'll be referred to as Case 1143B, he says, not looking up. Your old name is gone. Your boots are muddy, your hem soaked. The building is massive, red brick layered with soot and age, with windows so narrow they seem designed to keep secrets in. You're led inside through a series of groaning doors and echoing halls. The smell hits you first. Boiled cabbage, urine, bleach, and something sweetly decayed. As you pass down the corridor, you catch flashes through doorways. A woman rocking back and forth. A man pressing his ear to the wall and nodding, as if it's speaking to him. A doctor laughing too loudly. Someone moans behind a door. You glance. "Don't look in there," one of the men mutters. You're led to a desk where another attendant sits with ink-stained fingers and a thick register. You're told to remove your outer clothes. "For lice," they say. Your coat, boots, even your corset, all taken. In return, you're handed an ill-fitting smock that smells like vinegar and old sweat. Then come the scissors. Your hair is chopped short without ceremony. The clumps fall around your bare feet. You try to ask why. No one answers, just more notes on paper. A bucket of cold, soapy water is placed in front of you. You're told to wash. No privacy, no explanation. One woman did refuse once, they say. She bit a nurse and was restrained for 6 days straight. That's how rumours begin here. You look down at the soap. It's square, coarse and oddly grey, made from animal fat and lye. It stings your fingers as you scrub. You catch your reflection in the window, bare scalp patchy, clothes alien, your own face unsure if it's allowed to feel. And still, no one has told you why you're here. Your hands tremble, not from madness, just from cold and the rising fear of what comes next. Once you're dry and clothed in your new identity, baggy linen smock, thin slippers and no pockets, you're led down another hallway. This one's dimmer, narrower. There are no paintings here, no clocks, just gas lamps flickering above and a faint hum that you can't quite place until you realise. It's people murmuring, not talking, murmuring, a kind of low, eternal drone of discomfort. Your footsteps echo against the stone floor. A brass bell rings somewhere in the distance. No one tells you what it means. They never explain the sounds here. Not the screams, not the clatters, not the silence when it finally arrives. You pass a man sweeping the floor with obsessive precision. His broom makes tiny arcs like he's tracing some invisible symbol. His lips move, but no words come out. His sleeves are rolled up, and you spot fresh scratches on his forearm, neatly spaced like tally marks. 5, 10, 15. You stop counting. They open a wooden door with a great iron key. It groans like it doesn't want to, and then you see it. Your room. No, not a room. A cell. It's no bigger than a garden shed, with walls stained yellow by time and moisture. A narrow cot in one corner, straw mattress sunken from use. A tin chamber pot sits beside it like a dog waiting to be noticed. High up, near the ceiling, there's a slit of a window. It lets in a pale shaft of daylight that doesn't quite reach the floor. Your guide speaks again. Finally. You'll be seen by the physician in the morning. You sit on the edge of the cot. It creaks under you, loud enough that the man in the next cell taps his wall twice. Whether in greeting or complaint, you don't know. The first night is always the hardest, they say. That's when the building begins to speak to you. Not in words, but in sighs, footsteps, and the occasional knock from nowhere. The woman in the room 2 doors down hums lullabies to herself. The one beside you sobs into her straw. Someone far away shouts a name, not yours, but you still flinch. You try to sleep. The blanket you've been given is coarse and smells like iron. Blood, maybe, or just the rust from unwashed tubs. You wonder if this bed has known fever. You wonder if this room remembers all the people who've passed through it. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. That thought should be comforting. It isn't. Sometime past midnight you hear footsteps, not the usual ones. These are deliberate, slow, and too heavy for a nurse. They pause at your door, keys jangle, your body tenses, but the sound moves on. You breathe again. That was a doctor, you're told the next day. He likes to walk the halls at night, says he's listening to the patients. Listening for what, no one knows. But once, someone whispered that he marked their doors. And then the strange part. No one knew what the marks meant. Some say a plus sign means you're improving. Others say it means you'll be transferred. A few claim it's a death mark. But they also said he once labelled a man with a question mark. That man was never seen again. You don't know what to believe. But when you hear the keys next time, you pretend to be asleep. Deeply. Quietly. Like someone who won't cause trouble. Because here, trouble is the last thing you want to be. Your second day begins before the sun decides to show. A bell clangs just once, deep and metallic, and it reverberates through your bones like a distant church chime. You jerk awake, heart racing, unsure if it was real. But then you hear it again. Once more, then silence. You rise slowly, joints stiff from the cold. The cot has imprinted a grid on your skin, and the straw pokes through the ticking like impatient fingers. You rub your arms and exhale into your hands for warmth. There is no fireplace, no stove, no hope of hot water. You wait. A nurse arrives. Her apron is clean, but her eyes are exhausted. She doesn't speak. She gestures. You follow. Down another corridor you're led into a large tiled room with drains in the floor and a single high window casting a pale grey rectangle across the wall. Along one side, a long bench. Along the other, a row of open tubs, thick porcelain things stained with iron and time. There are already 3 women disrobing. One has no teeth. Another hums softly to herself while undressing, as if it's just another Tuesday. The third one hesitates when the nurse raises her brow. You feel her hesitation rise in your own chest. But you take off the smock anyway. The water is cold. Not cool. Not refreshing. Cold. Bone deep, lake in winter, pull your breath away cold. You're not eased in. You're placed in. By 2 attendants, 1 for each arm. Your breath vanishes in an instant. Your skin screams silently. You try to pull back, to speak, but the nurse shakes her head as if you've disappointed her. This is not for cleanliness. This is hydrotherapy. They claim it calms the nerves. That cold water shocks the brain into stillness, that it prevents hysteria. What it really does is paralyze the mind just enough to make you docile. After 3 minutes, you stop shivering because your body gives up trying. They wrap you in a coarse sheet afterward, but there are no towels. You drip in silence. A girl near you coughs wetly. The nurse eyes her but says nothing. Back in your room, the smock clings damply to your frame. You try to dry your feet with a thin blanket, but it's no use. You press your forehead to the wall, trying to find warmth in the stone. Instead, you find a name scratched faintly into the plaster. Elsie. No date, no message, just the name. You whisper it, because no one has said your own since yesterday. You wonder how long she was here. You wonder if she got out. At midday, you're handed a bowl. Something greyish and warm inside. A porridge, maybe, or thinned-out gruel. It smells faintly of meat, but you're not sure which kind. A crust of bread sits on top, damp around the edges. You eat it anyway. Hunger is stronger than fear now. The nurse watches from the doorway. Her hands never stop folding the same rag. Over and over, fold, refold, fold again. As if she's keeping something in check that might otherwise burst loose. Someone across the hall is muttering about rats. You can't see him, but his voice rises every few minutes. They dance on the ceiling. They've got boots now. And maybe, in a place like this, you start to believe him. The next ritual in the stripping of self isn't physical, it's clerical. Late that afternoon, a man in a waistcoat arrives outside your cell, flanked by 2 younger assistants, both eager-eyed and carrying ledgers. He's introduced as Dr. Percival. No first name, no smile, just the faintest scent of clove oil and chalk dust as he enters your room without asking. He doesn't sit. Instead, he paces, back and forth, like a professor lecturing to ghosts. He asks you questions, but they're not real questions. How often do you sleep, he begins, eyes not meeting yours. You answer carefully. Do you dream? And when you do, are they of violence? Sin? You hesitate. He nods, scribbles something furiously, then circles it. One of his assistants writes delusional tone in the margin of your file. You catch the word upside down and feel a cold knot twist in your gut. Then Dr. Percival lifts something from his coat pocket. It's a small wooden box lined with velvet. Inside are 6 small glass vials, each marked with a tiny brass number. He selects one, uncorks it, and dips a gloved finger in. Then he walks toward you. This is a tincture of belladonna, he says flatly. It helps with racing thoughts. You don't have racing thoughts. You have survival thoughts. But that isn't what they want to hear. He presses the drop to your tongue. It's bitter, like scorched honey and metal. Your mouth goes dry almost instantly. You blink, and the room seems a little too bright now, the air a little too heavy. His assistant watches you closely as if waiting for a sign. Not of improvement, of compliance. In Victorian asylums, treatment often meant sedation. Doctors kept patients pacified using morphine, opium, chloral hydrate, or, in this case, deadly nightshade. It didn't matter if you were suicidal or simply sad. If you were inconvenient, you were medicated into stillness. As Dr. Percival leaves, he nods once. She'll be moved to the general ward, he says, for observation. The 2 men beside him scribble again. You don't even get to hear the diagnosis, just the squeak of their boots as they vanish down the corridor. That night you're relocated. The general ward isn't quieter, it's louder. 30 beds lined in 2 rows. No curtains, no privacy. A long row of windows line the far wall, but they're barred and the glass is wavy with age. Candlelight throws shadows that look like people moving when they're not. You walk past one bed where a woman is sewing nothing with invisible thread. At another, a man weeps into a Bible with no pages. No one looks at you for long. New faces come and go all the time. Most don't stay long enough to remember. You're assigned a new bed and a new number. Your file is left in a wooden box at the end of the ward, unlocked. You peek inside while no one watches. Inside, you see your new label, Moral Madness Female. That's it. No notes on your fears, your loneliness, or your quiet endurance. Just 2 words and a dash. And now, you're one of them. Before sleep, a nurse walks down the line with a tray of small ceramic cups. One by one, she places them in each patient's hand. When it's your turn, she doesn't look at you, just places it in your palm and moves on. You sip. It tastes like alcohol mixed with soot. You don't ask what it is. No one ever does. The next morning, before the bells chime, before even the birds begin their timid rustle in the trees outside, you're awoken by the scrape of iron on iron. A key turns, and the matron steps in. Not the nurse, not this time. The matron. She's broad, stern, and carries with her an air of soap, starch, and judgment. Her keys jingle like a warning bell with every stride. You sit up fast, unsure what you've done wrong, but she doesn't speak to you. She simply gestures toward the far end of the ward where 3 other patients are standing in line, barefoot, heads down. "Doctor wants words," she says briskly, as if that explains everything. You shuffle into place at the end of the line. The hallway stretches before you, longer than you remembered. Oil lamps sputter on the walls and the floor beneath your feet is cold, even through your worn slippers. The others in the line don't speak. One woman is visibly shaking. Another mumbles a rhyme under her breath like a charm. You pass a staircase that spirals down, deeper than you thought the building went. Somewhere below, a man is screaming. It's not a scream of fear or pain, but confusion, like he doesn't know where he is anymore. When you reach the examination room, the door is already open. It smells of ink, alcohol, and something metallic. The walls are lined with dark wooden cabinets. In the centre sits a large oak desk, and behind it, Dr. Rigby. Not the one from yesterday. No, this one is younger, more fastidious. His moustache is trimmed to perfection, and his collar so starched you could cut cheese with it. He looks up, doesn't smile. "Case 1143B, he says, confirming your new name with a bored flick of his eyes. You nod. Sit. The chair you're given is smaller than it should be, and purposely uncomfortable. You perch on the edge as Dr. Rigby begins. He doesn't speak softly. He dictates. Subject presents with symptoms consistent with melancholia and irrational affect. Female, aged approximately 27, unmarried, no known children, suspected predisposition. Predisposition, as in, maybe your mother was sad once, or your aunt had nervous tremors. That's all it took back then. He picks up a metal tuning fork and strikes it on the table. The vibration hums through the air. He holds it to your temple. You flinch. He scribbles something down. Then he asks if you ever see things. Not metaphorically, visions, apparitions, flashes of light. You say no. He asks again, slowly this time, with a pen poised as if waiting for the right answer. You still say no. He sighs. Non-compliant effect, he writes. And now you realize the trap. Every response can be twisted into evidence. If you speak calmly, you're detached. If you get angry, you're hysterical. If you say nothing, you're catatonic. It's not about healing here. It's about fitting into a box. Behind him, a cabinet creaks open as his assistant retrieves a black-bound notebook filled with sketches, anatomical diagrams, crude portraits of patients, some screaming, some with their eyes rolled back, others mid-seizure. He flips to a blank page, begins sketching your profile. You're being recorded now, not as a person, as a case study, and you know, once your face is drawn in that book, it stays there forever, long after you're gone, long after anyone remembers your voice. The interview does not end with questions, it ends with silence, yours. That's what finally satisfies him. Dr. Rigby closes his ledger with a dull thump and rises as though the mere act of standing grants him superiority. You're dismissed with a flick of the fingers, as if you were a stray thread on his cuff. But you aren't returned to the general ward just yet. Instead, the matron escorts you down a different corridor, narrower, with warped floorboards and walls mottled with water stains. At the end is a low archway with a wooden sign above it. The paint is faded, but you can still make out the words, "Observation Wing." The door creaks open to reveal a chamber dimly lit by high-set clear-story windows. There are chairs here, many of them, all facing inward in a circle, as though for some gathering. Except there's no community. Each chair holds a single person, spaced evenly apart, all wearing the same drab smocks. Some stare at the floor, others fidget with invisible threads, or mutter to themselves in fragmented thoughts. You're led to an empty chair. You sit, and then nothing happens. No speech, no orders, just waiting. It stretches on for what feels like hours. Eventually, a young man to your left begins to tap his foot rhythmically against the floor, and without warning, one of the attendants strides over and slaps him clean across the face. The sound cracks through the stillness like a dropped dish. "Still means still," the man barks, and the tapping stops. No one looks up. You sit straighter. This, it seems, is a test. But of what? Stillness? Compliance? Endurance? You aren't told. You only understand the rules once you've broken them. After an hour, your name, or rather your number, is called 1143B. A voice from behind a screen beckons you forward. You step behind the screen and find a chair, a basin, and a man in a white coat who's far too cheerful. He has a kind face. That makes it worse. "I'm here to measure your temperament," he says, like he's discussing the weather. He straps a leather band around your arm and asks you to breathe deeply. Then he pulls out a box with a crank on the side. You recognize it from somewhere. A galvanic battery. Before you can ask what it does, he touches two small electrodes to your wrists and turns the crank. It stings. Not quite pain, but enough to make your muscles twitch involuntarily. He notes your reaction. "Moderate response to mild stimulation," he says with a smile. "Good, good." This is Victorian psychiatry at work, a belief that mental instability can be diagnosed through the body's electrical resistance. That nerves tell more truth than words. It's a theory born of wires and wishful thinking, and you're its latest subject. Once the test is over, he offers you a lump of sugar. A treat, he says. You don't know whether to eat it or fear it, but your body decides for you. Sweetness is so rare here. On your way back, you glance at the others still seated in that silent circle, some with blank stares, some whispering to people who aren't there, and you wonder, not for the first time, how many of them came here just like you, not mad, not broken, just unlucky. You remember something Dr. Rigby said under his breath, just loud enough for the assistant to hear. Sometimes it's not madness, it's merely misplaced inconvenience. And here, inconvenience is a diagnosis all its own. The corridor that leads to your assigned cell in the general ward feels longer tonight. Maybe it's the dim light. Maybe it's that the walls seem to lean inward, like they're listening. Or maybe it's what you heard someone whisper earlier, about the endless corridor. No one agrees where it is. Some say it's in the East Wing. Others say it only appears to those who don't belong here. One patient claims to have walked it for 3 days straight, passing doors that led nowhere and voices that never stopped. You assumed it was nonsense, but tonight you start to wonder. The hallway stretches on. You've passed your usual turn. You glance behind, but the nurse continues walking ahead, calm as ever. No sign of confusion on her face, but something feels wrong. There are too many doors, the pattern is off, and the windows, narrow slits up high, are all on the wrong side. You follow in silence, not daring to ask. Finally, she stops at a heavy black door you've never seen before. No number, just a brass knob and a tarnished keyhole. She doesn't knock, just opens it and waves you in. It's your new temporary room. You step inside. The door shuts behind you. The first thing you notice is the sound, or rather, the lack of it. No whispers, no muttering, no coughs or shuffles, just thick silence that presses on your ears like wet wool. The cell is larger than your old one, but colder. Its stone walls are bare except for a single wooden beam overhead, stained from something long dried. The cot has a newer blanket, and a ceramic jug of water sits beside a chipped basin. You sit. You listen, and then you begin to hear it. Not from outside, but from within the walls. It starts as a tapping, rhythmic, faint, then a pause, then 2 taps more, then silence again. You press your ear to the cold stone, tap, pause, tap, tap. You wait, and before you know it, you've started tapping back. 1, pause, 2. The response comes almost instantly. 3 taps. A conversation has begun, but you don't know the language. That's when you realize someone on the other side is doing the same thing, listening, responding. You don't know who they are, what they want, or if they even exist beyond this wall. But in the quiet of that endless corridor, this becomes your ritual. Each night the taps return, sometimes short, sometimes drawn out. One night you tap your name in rhythm, the next night they tap something longer, repeated, almost like a phrase. You start to memorize it. You ask a nurse, carefully, without naming names, if there's someone next door. She frowns. That cell's been empty for 3 years. We don't put patients there anymore. You ask why. She doesn't answer. Later, someone slips a note under your door. A torn scrap folded twice. No name, no handwriting you recognize. It reads, "Don't answer the wall on Sundays." You don't sleep that night. You lie awake staring at the ceiling. It's Sunday now. No taps. The silence is worse. It stretches, not just through the cell, but through your chest, your limbs, the back of your throat. You didn't realize how much you'd come to need the pattern. That strange, unseen rhythm knocking back at you through the wall. It had become proof of something, that you weren't alone, that someone somewhere was real. But tonight, there's only your breath and the occasional rustle of straw under your thin blanket. You try to convince yourself it was a prank, a patient's game, a cruel little trick to see if you'd crack, and yet the silence feels wrong, like something is waiting. That's when you hear the first scratch. Not a tap, a scratch, long and slow, like fingernails dragging across stone. Not frantic, deliberate. You sit up. It stops. Your pulse races. You press your ear to the wall. Nothing. And then, so faintly you think you're imagining it, you hear a whisper. Not words, just breath passing between bricks. A presence. You jerk back, suddenly cold despite the blanket. When the morning comes, you don't mention it to anyone. Not even the nurse who brings the grey porridge and watery tea. You just stare at the wall and wait. Monday arrives. The tapping resumes, short and light, as if nothing ever happened. You don't reply, not right away. A week passes, then 2. You're returned to the main ward without warning. Back among the rows of beds, the rustle of pages and the endless muttering. Someone has been placed in your old cell. You wonder if they'll hear the wall, if they'll get the same note. Life in the general ward is louder but duller. There are no strange whispers here, just the steady drone of suffering. But now your eyes begin to notice things. On the edge of your bed frame, a mark scratched deep, a small X flanked by 2 vertical lines. You spot a similar mark beneath a chair leg near the door, another beside the fireplace, always the same pattern, never obvious. You begin to suspect it's a code. One evening, while sweeping the floor during mandatory activity hour, you spot it beneath the heel of an old stool. This one is newer, freshly etched. You lift the stool and find a folded paper beneath it. This time, it's not a warning. It's a list. Names, numbers, cells, all crossed out, except one. Case 1143B, marked for private study. Your chest tightens. You crumple the note before anyone sees, hide it in your smock. Your hands are sweating now. That evening, as the oil lamps flicker low and the ward settles into restless half-sleep, you glance across the room and see a man standing by the window. Not a patient. A figure in a doctor's coat silhouetted in the gaslight, hands clasped behind his back, watching. You pretend not to notice, but you feel it. You've been noticed, and in this place, being noticed is dangerous. Later that night you dream of corridors, Long, endless, shifting. You walk them barefoot, silent. The walls breathe, the floor creaks with every memory buried in the mortar, and at the end, just before you wake, you reach a door marked with your number. You don't open it. Not yet. Mornings in the ward settle into a rhythm, if you can call it that. There's the clanging bell, the splash of cold water in the communal basin, the clatter of wooden bowls being handed out like prizes no one wants. You learn slowly not to expect much. A strip of bread if you're lucky. A sliver of fat some days floating in thin broth. But then one morning, something new. Tonics. A rolling cart squeaks down the hallway, pushed by a young nurse with red-rimmed eyes and a clipboard clutched to her chest like armour. Behind her walks Dr. Bellamy. Tall, bearded, wearing a coat a little too clean for someone who works here. The cart is lined with bottles. Some brown, some clear, some with cloudy sediment swirling inside. Glass droppers, teaspoons, labelled vials, and smell. A deep chemical sweetness lingers in the air as they move from bed to bed. You recognise one of the labels, calomel. You've heard of it before, mercury chloride. Used to purge melancholy, they said. But what it really does is scald the insides, rot the gums, and drive men mad with tremors. You don't ask what's in yours. They don't tell. Dr. Bellamy approaches with a warm tone that feels rehearsed. You've been observed to be overly still. That concerns us. He says it as if you've been caught committing quiet fraud. He hands you a small cup with a chalky white liquid inside. A tonic for balance, he says. You drink it. You're not sure if it helps, but it does something. That afternoon your stomach cramps and your head pulses like a drum. You feel floaty, like you've been pulled half a foot outside of your body. The corners of things become too sharp. The window light flickers even when nothing's moving. Around you, the other patients react differently. One woman becomes giddy, laughing so hard she drops to her knees. Another stares at her hands for hours, mumbling about how they no longer belong to her. One man just vomits onto his pillow and isn't moved for hours. The doctors call this a normal reaction. But the thing is, it isn't even the mercury that's most common. It's laudanum, a blend of opium and alcohol, mixed into everything. Even the so-called digestive elixir handed out at dinner. It explains why everyone moves slower after meals, why the lines between dreams and thoughts begin to blur. One nurse, a kind one, barely older than you, leans in and whispers, "Don't drink the red one. Ever." You nod, but don't ask. You've learned. Questions are liabilities here. Each one gets recorded, measured, turned into evidence. That night, you dream again. But this time, not of corridors. You dream of your own house, your old one. The worn rug, the kettle, the garden gate creaking in the wind. You dream of your mother humming a song you haven't heard in years. You're warm, your limbs light. You don't want to leave. But in the dream, you turn and see something hovering in the corner of the room. Not a shadow, not a person, a sensation. Like someone watching from behind the wallpaper. Breathing just slightly out of rhythm with your own. And then, you wake, and it takes you too long to realize where you are. Because for just a moment you'd forgotten. And forgetting here is dangerous. The tonic isn't a one-time thing. It becomes part of your daily ritual, along with the grey gruel, the endless pacing and the forced silence. Some days it's cloudy, other days tinged pink or yellow. Once it fizzes on your tongue like vinegar meeting chalk. But always, it arrives with the same bland assurance from the nurse. For your balance. You've stopped feeling balanced. Now your limbs feel like they belong to someone else. You walk slower, as if the air is thicker. Thoughts take longer to form. Sometimes when you reach for a memory, it slips through your grasp like soap. Your body still functions, but your edges blur. And then the doctor begins changing your dose. They don't tell you this outright, but you feel it. The shift. The way your dreams stretch longer. The way you forget what day it is. One morning you find yourself staring at your own hand, unsure whether to move it or wait for someone to tell it what to do. One of the older women in the ward whispers to you as she folds a sheet. "They're softening you," she says. You ask what she means. So you don't snap when the real treatments begin. You want to laugh, but your mouth won't quite follow through. Later that week, a new man arrives in the ward. Young, but aged by something behind the eyes. His hands tremble when he speaks. He was a school teacher, he says. Came here because he couldn't stop crying after his wife died. That's it. Nothing more. The other patients nod with sympathy, but no one acts surprised. Grief, in Victorian medicine, was often mistaken for disease. If you mourned too long, you were unfit. If you didn't mourn at all, you were dangerous. No one really knew the appropriate amount of sadness, so they measured it in weeks. If it stretched too long, it became madness. A few days later, the schoolteacher stops talking. He just stares into space, mouth slightly open, drool collecting at the corner of his lips. Someone asks what happened. "He got the red tonic," someone whispers. You remember what the nurse said. You never touch the red one. One morning the nurse brings your usual, but the cup is different. Ceramic instead of tin. You hesitate. The liquid inside is darker. Your breath catches. She notices. "Dr. Bellamy says this one's tailored for you," she says brightly, "based on your response patterns." You smile, you nod, and when she turns away you pretend to drink. You tilt the cup just enough for the liquid to slide past your lips, but hold it on your tongue. Wait until she's gone. Then walk to the latrine and spit it into the pit. It smells like syrup and iron. For the first time in weeks, you feel like you again. Not entirely, but enough to remember something. A face, a name, a garden gate. That evening you write on a scrap of laundry tag with a smuggled pencil stub. A single sentence. "I am still here." You slide it beneath your mattress, just in case someone ever wonders, just in case you forget again. The next morning, your limbs feel lighter, and the walls, though still narrow, no longer seem quite as tall. By now, you've learned that in the asylum, treatment and punishment are often the same thing, just dressed in different uniforms, which is why you're not entirely surprised when, after refusing to drink the tonic 2 days in a row, you're summoned to the bathing ward again. You recognise the hallway immediately, the cracked tiles, the perpetual damp, the long drain that snakes along the floor like a scar. But this time, the attendants aren't carrying towels or soap. They're carrying restraint straps. You're told it's for your safety, that the cold bath is a restorative shock, one used for patients resisting their medications or for those exhibiting stubborn melancholia. That last phrase makes you laugh, bitterly, before the bath sucks the laughter out of your lungs. They don't ease you in. They lower you swiftly, your arms bound to the wooden crossbeam placed above the tub. Your legs kick instinctively, but there's nowhere to go. The water is so cold it doesn't feel like water. It feels like something angry, like the air has turned against you, and then they leave you there. You're not submerged, not entirely, just enough to chill every inch of your skin. The edge of the beam bites into your shoulders. Time becomes a blur. 5 minutes, 10, maybe more. You count the drips from the faucet because there's nothing else to hold on to. Eventually the shivering stops, not because you're warm, but because your body gives up trying. When they return, they dry you with coarse rags and say nothing. One of the attendants mutters to the other that cold makes the madness leak out like it's bad blood. You want to scream at him that you're not mad. But in here, protesting is just another symptom. Back in the ward, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a cracked mirror above the wash basin. Pale, lips blue, eyes hollow. But what chills you more is not what you see. It's what you don't. You don't recognize the expression on your face. It's not despair. It's something worse. Compliance. Later that day, you're ordered into recreation, which is a word they use generously. It involves a mop, a bucket of vinegar water, and the task of scrubbing the hallway floors until the stone feels like glass. A nurse stands over you, hands folded, watching. You scrub until your knees ache, until your knuckles go raw. If you stop, she clears her throat. If you look up, she smiles tightly and says, "Isn't it good to be useful again?" They call this occupational therapy. It's a practice rooted in the idea that labour purges illness, that the idle mind is a breeding ground for madness. Never mind that you're not idle by choice. Never mind that your mind is exhausted. You must move, must serve, must prove that you're not a burden to the world that locked you away. Next to you, a woman scrubs in silence. Her hair is nearly gone, shorn short and patchy. But she hums a lullaby as she works, over and over. You recognise the tune. It's the same one the woman in the observation wing used to whisper through the walls, and then you realise it's not a lullaby, it's a code. You keep scrubbing, slower now, your ears tuned more to the rhythm of the humming than to the nurse's footsteps. The woman beside you, small frame, hollow cheeks, sings just under her breath, but there's something intentional in her pauses, the way certain notes linger. You don't speak, that would break the illusion. But in your mind you begin to count. 3 notes, pause, 2, 4, 1. A pattern. The next day she's reassigned to kitchen duty. You don't see her again. That same afternoon, while mopping near the stairwell, you spot it. A mark etched into the wood just below the banister rail. It looks accidental at first, like a splintered gouge. But the longer you stare, the more it mirrors the rhythm she sang. 3 vertical slashes, a short one, then 4, then a dot. You check near the other railings, same marks, some worn nearly smooth, others fresh. This isn't random. You begin to suspect that patients have been communicating for years, carving a language beneath the noses of their keepers. Back in the ward, you test your theory. On a sliver of soap, you etch a similar pattern and tuck it beneath a loose floor tile at the edge of your bed. The next morning it's gone, and in its place is a scrap of linen tied in a knot. A reply. And suddenly, in this place where your name was taken, your voice muted and your body controlled, you have a secret again, a tiny rebellion, a thread of human connection. But secrets don't stay quiet in Bedlam for long. During evening check, the nurse notices your hands, rawer than usual, soap still under your fingernails. She squints, asks no questions but makes a note on her clipboard. You pretend not to notice. The next day, a different nurse enters your cell. This one isn't familiar. Her cap is crooked and her shoes are too clean. She says she's here for a brief evaluation. You're escorted down the hall, not toward the usual exam room but to a side wing. The walls here are freshly whitewashed, the air too still. She opens a door and inside is a chair. Not just any chair, the spinning chair. You've heard whispers about it. A relic from older days but still wheeled out for particular cases. A wooden frame with straps across the arms and chest, mounted on a central axis like a child's top. They say it was invented to restore balance to the inner ear, that spinning the body would reorder the mind. But mostly it just induces vomiting, vertigo, and panic. You're strapped in before you can protest. The nurse steps back and nods, and then the spin begins. Slow at first, then faster. The ceiling blurs, your stomach flips, your thoughts splinter. Time becomes irrelevant. You forget which way is up. Your arms strain against the leather straps. Someone is speaking, but it sounds like wind. You squeeze your eyes shut. Finally, it stops. The world doesn't. Even when they unstrap you and guide you back to your cell, the hallway sways. Your knees buckle. You vomit into your own lap before making it to the chamber pot. The nurse doesn't flinch. She just wipes the chair clean for the next patient. They don't call it punishment. They call it therapy. And tomorrow they'll ask if you feel more balanced. You'll nod. Because now you understand something vital. Obedience keeps you still, but the soap is still under your bed, and the pattern is spreading. It's during supper, grey broth again, this time with something stringy floating in it, that you first notice something odd about the women's wing. You hadn't been allowed near it before. Most of the asylum is strictly divided by gender, but lately the rules seem to be bending. Maybe there's a staff shortage. Maybe they think you're tame enough now to handle commingled duties. Or maybe someone's watching how you react. You're sent to deliver clean linens, 4 folded sheets, 2 threadbare towels, and you're told to walk down the southern hallway to the female convalescent ward. You take the corridor slowly. It's quieter here, almost unnaturally so. The first thing you notice is that no one is talking. There are women sitting on benches, heads bowed, hands folded in their laps like dolls placed too carefully. A few stare ahead with vacant eyes, not blinking, not reacting. You cough lightly as you pass just to see if anyone stirs. No one does. One woman, young, maybe 19, sits with her hands clasped over her stomach. Her wrists are bruised, fading yellow-green. Her hair is neatly combed, her smock pressed. But her eyes follow you. You pause. She mouths something. At first you think it's your name, but no. She's mouthing something else. One word. Over and over. Hysteria. You nod slightly, unsure whether it's a question, a warning, or a confession. You've heard the term before, of course. It was one of the favourite diagnoses for women who felt too much, spoke too loudly, cried too long. Hysteria meant anything and everything. Grief, rage, independence, boredom. Even menstruation could earn you the label, and once you had the label you could be treated, you could be restrained, you could be cut open. The linen delivery room is at the far end of the corridor, just past a locked door marked Treatment Wing Private. You're told to leave the stack on a wooden bench and return without delay, but as you turn, the door behind you creaks. Not open, just enough to let sound through. You hear muffled crying, then a man's voice, clinical, detached. He's talking about pressure, adjustment, instruments. Then something metal scrapes. You don't linger. Back in the main ward, you ask one of the older nurses casually what they do in the women's wing. She gives a non-committal shrug. Mostly calming procedures, she says. You press her. She sighs. You know what they say. Wandering wombs 'cause wandering minds. It's a joke, obviously. But the Victorians believed in it. That a woman's uterus could physically move around her body, bumping into organs, disturbing her temperament. The treatment? Pressure, restraint. In some cases, surgical removal. They called it restoring balance. You call it what it is. Violence with a medical badge. Later that evening, the girl who mouthed hysteria is gone. No one speaks of her. No one asks. But when you pass the wall near the women's corridor, you see a new mark etched in. A curved line, like a crescent. Below it, 4 vertical slashes. You don't know what it means yet. But you press your finger to it, and you promise. You'll remember. The next morning the girl's bed is empty. Sheets folded, mattress stripped. No trace left except the faint indentation where her head used to rest. You're not the only one who notices. An older patient, a woman with a permanent squint and bandaged wrists, leans toward you as you sweep the edge of the ward. They take the hysterics out back, she says in a voice like gravel, where the men can't hear the screaming. You meet her eyes. She nods once, then goes back to sewing invisible thread through the hem of her smock. That evening you're assigned to assist Nurse Halcombe with record filing. She's new, only been here 2 months, and still treats patients like people, which makes her rare. She hands you a stack of documents, most scribbled in hasty ink, dosage charts, doctor's orders, notes in the margins. One note catches your eye. Case 1027DF. Persistent feminine agitation. Subject demonstrates physical resistance to uterine calming treatment. Recommend ether for future examinations. You freeze. So it's true. It's not just baths and spinning chairs. It's not just mercury and laudanum. There are internal treatments here. Things they do in rooms with locked cabinets and surgical tools. Treatments no one talks about, because no one comes back able to speak of them. You tuck the paper under the stack, but your hands shake. That night you dream of a long corridor again, but not endless this time. It has a door at the end, just barely open. You can hear someone breathing inside. When you wake, it's still dark. Someone's moving near your bed. You sit up, just enough to see the shadow. It's Nurse Halcombe. She presses a finger to her lips, then slips something into your hand, a folded piece of linen. When she leaves, you unfold it beneath the blanket. A message, hand-stitched in red thread. The marks are real. The code is older than the doctor's. Keep your eyes open. Wednesday, third stair. You don't sleep again that night. Instead, you go over the message in your mind until you've memorized every word, every crooked stitch. You trace the old marks you've seen behind the bench, under the basin, scratched faintly into bedposts, and begin to piece them together. A language passed through generations of inmates. A survival map. Wednesday arrives. During work duty, you linger by the stairwell that leads down to the old bath wing. The third step creaks louder than the others. You wait until no one's watching, then crouch, pretending to tie your slipper, and run your fingers along the underside. There. Another cloth bundle tucked into a crevice. You unwrap it when you're alone. Inside is a charcoal sketch, rough but clear. A floor plan. The asylum's lower level. 2 wings, one crossed out in red. A third hallway marked with a symbol you now recognise, the crescent with 4 slashes. Someone has mapped this place before. Someone knew every turn, every locked door, every secret treatment room, and they've left it for someone like you. You fold the map, slip it inside your mattress ticking, and sit very still. Because now the rules have changed. You're no longer just surviving, you're starting to navigate. Your body plays the part of an obedient patient, scrubbing floors, drinking the safer tonics, nodding when spoken to, but your mind is elsewhere now. Always listening, always calculating. The map beneath your mattress is memorized. You've traced it so many times in your head that you could draw it in the dirt with your eyes closed. You know where the west stair creaks, where the corridor narrows just before the record hall, where the nurse's keys hang each night on the same peg by the lantern sconce. And now you know where the isolation wing begins. It's not marked on the official wall charts. To the staff, it's storage or overflow. But you've heard the stories whispered through bed frames and behind cupped hands. Rooms with no windows. Patients who return with eyes too wide and speech too neat. Like puppets newly strung. They say the wing was once part of the original workhouse, before Bedlam swallowed it whole. Thick stone walls, no heating, one way in, no way out without a key. Today, you're assigned to linen duty again. Your hands tremble slightly as you carry a stack of clean sheets, because you've planned this moment, timed it to the shift change. Nurse Halcombe meets your eyes briefly as you pass. She doesn't smile, but she doesn't stop you either. You turn left where you're supposed to turn right. No one calls out. You follow the path just as the charcoal sketch directed. Past the blocked-off stairwell, behind the supply shelf, through a narrow arch mostly hidden by a rusted coat rack. And there, just like the map promised, is a door. Iron-bound. No knob, just a sliding hatch, chest high. You knock. 3 short, 1 long, 2 short, the way the map said. Nothing. Then the hatch slides open. A face appears, thin, pale, wary. A woman in her 40s, perhaps. Her hair has been cropped unevenly, and one side of her mouth is permanently twisted, like the muscles no longer remember how to smile properly. She doesn't speak, but her eyes search yours, then flick to the bundle of linens in your arms. You hold them up. She opens the door. You step inside. The corridor is colder than you imagined. No lanterns, only daylight, slipping in crookedly from slits in the stone. The air smells faintly of lime dust and boiled leather. There are only 6 rooms here, and they're not numbered. Each has a wooden door reinforced with metal bars, small sliding windows, the kind used not to look out but to be looked into. Inside, you glimpse shadows moving, slow, methodical. One man is pacing in perfect rhythm, 6 steps forward, 6 back. Another woman sits on the floor, scratching a pattern into the boards with her fingernail. A third is reciting scripture backward, eyes closed. No one speaks above a whisper. You're led to an empty room and told to fold the linens there. The woman from the door watches from the hallway. You get the sense she isn't staff, not really. She's someone who became staff by surviving long enough. As you work, you notice a mark on the wall, barely visible behind the wash basin, Not scratched this time, but painted over in fading whitewash. The crescent, and beneath it a handprint. Small, childlike. You don't ask. You fold the last sheet and rise. The woman steps aside to let you pass, but grips your arm just before the door. Her voice is hoarse from disuse. "They don't treat madness here," she says. "They create it." Then she lets go. You return to the ward with the linen cart and your heart pounding like you've run a mile. No one stops you. No one even seems to notice you've been gone longer than allowed. That, somehow, is more disturbing than if they had. The other patients go about their routines, rocking, muttering, folding, breathing in that slow, synchronized way that the tonics and spinning chairs and ice baths seem to teach them. But now you see it all differently. You see the ones who've been to the isolation wing. They sit straighter, smile just a little too readily, blink a little too often, like they're unsure what's real. One of them, a man who once told you about his sister's wedding in great detail, no longer remembers your name, or hers. It's not forgetting, it's erasure. The next morning you wake to find something tucked under your blanket. Not a note this time, but a wooden button, stained dark and worn smooth by years of handling. You turn it over. On the back, carved so faintly you almost miss it. A crescent and 5 slashes. A new symbol. You hide it instantly. And now, something has changed. The others are watching you more closely. Not the nurses, the patients. You catch their glances. Quick, curious, measuring. As if they're trying to decide, are you one of us now? One evening, you're called from supper early. Told you're being moved, temporarily they say, to help ease the congestion in the West Wing. You know what this really means. They're testing you. Seeing how you respond to being shuffled around. Seeing what cracks. The West Wing is older, with high arched ceilings and faded murals of angels and scripture. Remnants from the days when Bedlam believed salvation came by prayer and not poison. Here you meet Mr. Whitlow, a patient who wears a waistcoat 2 sizes too large and speaks in rhyme. He's been here for 23 years, he says, and remembers when there were flowers in the courtyard. They grew poppies, he whispers, until they realized opium did a better job. You laugh before you mean to. He gives you a long look, then reaches beneath his mattress and pulls out a tiny paper roll yellow with age. He places it in your palm. "Don't read it here," he says. "Find the South Chapel, the one they bricked up. Knock 3 times. Soft. The wall listens." That night you sneak the paper into your cell and unroll it slowly, heart thudding. It's not just a message. It's a list. Names, numbers, symbols, dates. Some crossed out, some underlined. One of them is yours. Next to it, a single word. Capable. It doesn't feel like a compliment. It feels like a burden. The paper is old. Older than Mr. Whitlow, probably. Passed from hand to hand across generations of Bedlam's forgotten minds. And now it's yours. You lie in bed, wide awake, listening to the tapping start again. But this time, you understand it. The wall is no longer just noise, it's a voice. And tonight, it's calling for you. You rise before dawn. The hallway is still, the ward wrapped in a heavy hush broken only by the occasional snore or the creak of beds shifting under restless limbs. You've timed it carefully, just before the bells, just after the night nurse finishes her rounds. The paper roll with the list is hidden in your smock, pressed flat against your chest. The word capable still lingers in your mind like a brand. You pass the main staircase, then take the long way around to avoid the staff lounge. The floor here dips unevenly, the ceiling gets lower. No patients are assigned to this section anymore. Too cold, too damp. But on the wall ahead, faint and flaking, is a painted angel missing its face. You recognize it from the map. This is it, the bricked-up chapel. You knock 3 times, soft, as Mr. Whitlow instructed. Nothing. Then, tap, tap, tap. Pause, tap. You wait. A panel shifts. Not much, just enough to reveal a narrow opening in the stone where a brick has been loosened. A hand reaches out, palm down. You place the list in it without speaking. The hand vanishes. The panel closes. You step back, pulse racing, heart thudding like fists on a locked door. You've passed a test. You just don't know which one yet. The next few days go by in a blur. The nurses no longer linger near your bed. The tonics become thinner, almost watery. The cold baths stop. You're no longer assigned labour in the hallways. At first, it feels like mercy. Then, it feels like isolation. You've moved into a new category, watched but not interfered with. One afternoon, you catch sight of yourself in a shard of broken mirror. You look older, not in the face, but in the way you hold your shoulders, the caution in your eyes. You don't move like prey anymore. You move like someone trying not to be caught watching the hunters. That night, while changing linens, you pass a row of beds in the far end of the male ward. One man, gaunt, white-haired, whispering to no one, locks eyes with you as you walk past. "They cured me," he says softly. You pause. He leans in, whispering just loud enough. "They said I wasn't afraid enough." You want to ask what that means, but he's already curled back into his blanket like nothing happened. Later you mention him to Mr. Whitlow during shared recreation hour, meaning both of you are allowed to walk the courtyard for 20 minutes under close watch. "He's a laugher," Whitlow says. You raise an eyebrow. He explains. "Some patients, they laugh too much, for no reason, all day like bells in the wrong wind. Doctors call it mania, but sometimes it's not madness, it's memory." "You don't understand," Whitlow continues. "They make the laughers forget. They shock it out, beat it out, drown it out. But the ones who survive, they laugh still, not because they're happy, because they know something no one else believes." You ask what that is. That nothing here is accidental. You think about the girl in the women's ward, the mark beneath the basin, the linen message, the handprint behind the wall, and then you realise he's not wrong. This place isn't broken. It was built this way. You return to your cell and lie awake for hours, staring at the faint cracks in the ceiling. The phrase repeats in your head, "Nothing here is accidental." You begin to see patterns where once there was only noise, the timing of the bells, the way meals are served late on Fridays, the missing patient who was moved right after asking questions about the heating pipes. It's all deliberate, not sloppy, not neglectful, structured. Even the madness begins to feel curated. You begin observing more carefully. When patients are deemed improved, you notice it always follows a sequence. Increased dosage, temporary isolation, a visit from Dr. Rigby or Bellamy, then a return with a fixed smile and slowed blinking. They nod too often, speak in polite, echoing phrases. They've been scrubbed, not just clean, but smooth. One day, during laundry duty, you're assigned to help collect soiled linens from the East Infirmary, a ward rarely visited. This is where the convalescent cases are sent. The quiet ones, they call them. What they really mean is the ones they gave up on. You push the cart slowly through the sour air. The walls here are painted blue, long faded to grey. The windows are barred tighter. No one speaks. No one looks up. You pass one bed where a woman lies perfectly still, her eyes open. Her hands are folded over her chest. She blinks once every 30 seconds. You time it. You see the line of dried laudanum at the corner of her mouth. Her name is stitched into her blanket. Iris W. You remember that name. She once taught patients to sew in the activity hall. She used to hum, just a thread of sound, while threading needles. Now she doesn't move, doesn't hum, doesn't exist in any way that feels human. You reach for her sheet, and as you lift it, something falls to the floor. A cloth pouch, knotted shut. You hide it quickly and push your cart out before anyone sees. Back in your cell, you untie the knot with shaking fingers. Inside is a single iron key and a slip of paper that simply reads, "Boiler room, during fire drill." You sit there for a long time, holding the key like it's a hot coal. And then you smile, because for the first time you realise something extraordinary. The patients of this place, forgotten, silenced, dismissed, have been building something beneath the system, a network, a resistance, a map. The next day, during mealtime, one of the quiet men across the table coughs twice and slides a cup forward. Scratched into the wood beneath it, a crescent, and next to it, the number 10. You don't ask what it means. You don't have to. You're being given the next step. Someone is watching you. Someone trusts you. The fire drill happens once a month. You've heard the bell before. Chaotic but predictable. No one likes it. Patients are marched into the courtyard, told to stay calm, hands clasped. Staff rush inside, pretending to sweep every hallway. It's a drill. It's always been a drill. But next time, it will be your moment. You slip the key under your mattress, next to the map, the button, and the list with your name. All your pieces are there now. The game has begun. The fire drill comes sooner than expected. Rain is drizzling outside. Cold, steady, soaking through smocks and sleeves. But the bell rings anyway. A long grating clang, followed by the sharp bark of Nurse Halcombe's voice, ordering everyone to line up. You move like the others, head down, eyes blank. But inside, your pulse drums. This is it. The courtyard is already filling with bodies, hunched and shivering under the grey sky. The staff count heads. The nurses clutch clipboards. The orderlies carry batons like they always do, casually but just visible enough. You scan the crowd as you step out. Mr. Whitlow is there, sitting on the wet bench, reciting a children's rhyme under his breath. The woman who sang in code is wringing her hands, her lips twitching like she knows something is coming. The fire bell rings a second time. That's your signal. You slip away during the shuffling of the third head count. No one notices, or if they do, they don't stop you. The corridor is deserted. You make your way down the north wing stairwell, through the laundry chamber, past the supply shelf marked to be mended, and find the rusted iron door with the faded boiler room, authorised only, plaque barely clinging to the wood. The key fits. It turns with a reluctant groan. Inside, the heat hits you like a wave. The room breathes with machinery, metal lungs wheezing and sighing as steam hisses through pipes overhead. Shadows shift across the brick walls. It smells of scorched iron, mildew, and something almost sweet. Burnt linen, maybe. The boiler itself squats in the corner like a sleeping beast, its iron belly pulsing. You move carefully past it, looking for a hatch, a panel, something. And then you see it. A loose floor tile behind the boiler, half hidden by a coil of blackened hose. You pry it up. Below is a hole, not wide but deep enough. A tunnel, crudely dug, lined with old timber and damp cloth to muffle sound. It's no more than 3 feet high, but it leads somewhere. You drop down inside, crawling on hands and knees. The air changes. It smells older here. The kind of old that doesn't belong to time but to secrecy. You feel it in your chest. You crawl for what feels like 15 minutes. It narrows, then widens slightly. You pass a pile of discarded rags, a rusted spoon, the remains of a candle stub melted into the dirt. You are not the first. Finally, the tunnel ends at a wooden hatch. You push. It opens. You're in a storeroom, one you recognise from the map. In the Eastern Administrative Wing, a place patients are never allowed. You rise slowly, brushing dirt from your knees, and then you freeze, because sitting at the far end of the storeroom, facing the door, is a man. He doesn't move. He's tied to the chair. His head is tilted downward, chin resting on his chest. His hands are bound behind him. A bowl of uneaten gruel rests at his feet. You step forward. He's breathing. Barely. You whisper, "Who are you?" He stirs. His lips crack as he forms the word, "Inspector." He lifts his head slowly with the kind of movement that costs something. His eyes are bloodshot, the whites yellowed, the pupils unfocused. He looks at you as if unsure whether you're real. You take a cautious step closer and he flinches, not from fear but from instinct, like an animal that's been struck too many times to believe in kindness. "I am Inspector Merrin," he whispers, voice dry and cracked. "Sent from the board." You blink. The board. You've heard that term only once, months ago, murmured by a nurse with a nervous laugh when a man in a bowler hat arrived unexpectedly. You thought it was a legend, that someone somewhere outside these walls actually cared what happened inside them. Now he's here, broken, forgotten. "Why are you here?" you ask. He swallows. "I was investigating the admission records. Too many names, no family contacts, too many deaths with no inquiry." He coughs, wet, rattling. "I got too close. Then I became one of you." You glance at the gruel on the floor. It's barely touched. Flies buzz lazily above it. The man's lips are blistered, and a bruised ring circles one wrist. His coat, once a fine wool, is stiff with sweat and filth. You crouch beside him. "Why haven't they killed you?" His eyes flash. Not fear, but something like resentment. "Because I'm proof. If I vanish, questions follow. But if I lose my mind..." He trails off. "They just say I cracked under the pressure." He leans forward, as much as the ropes allow. "There's a ledger," he breathes. "A red one. Locked in the East Records room. Names, payments, bribes. It's why they keep so many of you here. Not to help you, to hide you." You feel a chill rise in your chest. You'd suspected as much, but to hear it confirmed, here, from someone outside the system, it's different. It means you're not imagining things. It means your suffering has purpose, not for healing, for profit. You ask, "How do I get to the ledger?" His head droops again. Key, in the matron's desk. Top drawer. Double false bottom. She never locks it. Thinks no one's clever enough to look. You touch his shoulder. "I'll come back." He laughs once, a short, painful sound. "No, you won't." Then he adds, almost as an afterthought, "Leave me something to drink, if you can." You pull the water flask from your waistband and press it into his hand. It takes him 2 tries to grip it. Then, from the hallway outside the storeroom, a footstep. You turn. Voices. Close. You scan the room. There's no other exit. You slip back into the tunnel, closing the hatch just as the door creaks open. You crawl fast, heart pounding, elbows bruising against the sides, breath echoing in your ears. You don't stop until you reach the boiler room again. You push open the grate, slide back into the hallway and pull the door shut just as the courtyard bell rings to signal the end of the drill. When you rejoin the group, soaked and trembling, Nurse Halcombe frowns but says nothing. You fall into line. But inside, something has shifted. This place is no longer a labyrinth. It's a machine. And now you know where the gears are. The next few days pass in a blur of caution. You return to routine, mopping floors, eating gruel, pretending your eyes are dull and your mind is soft. But underneath it all, your thoughts burn with quiet purpose. The inspector is alive. There is a ledger, and the matron's desk hides the key. You wait, you watch, you bide your time, and then, on a Tuesday morning, the moment arrives. The matron is called to the East Wing for a dressing change emergency, a phrase that always makes the nurses scramble. You're already nearby, dusting windowsills in the clerical hallway, a feather brush in one hand and the old charcoal map tucked under your sleeve. You slip into the office silently. Her desk is a hulking walnut thing with lion's feet, and a drawer that sticks if pulled too fast. You know exactly where to look. Top right, false bottom. You slide your fingers along the base of the drawer until they find the catch. Push. Click. Inside, wrapped in waxed cloth, a brass key. You take it. You don't hesitate. You don't close the drawer completely either. Matron is superstitious. She'd notice if it sat flush. You exit before the nurse's footsteps echo back into the corridor. The red ledger is said to be kept in the records room, 2nd floor, eastern wing. A place patients are never allowed. But you've learned that rules here are more like suggestions, and what matters most is how invisible you can make yourself. That night, you fake a dizzy spell near the stairwell. 2 nurses fuss over you while you sway and mumble. "Air," you whisper. "Please. Just for a moment." They sigh, annoyed, and prop you against the stair banister. 5 minutes, one snaps, then back to bed. They walk off muttering, and you slip up the stairs, silent as a thought. The door to the records room opens with a soft snick. Inside, it smells of dried ink, mildew, and old dust. Shelves line every wall, some stacked high with folders tied in string, others with ledger books stacked like bricks. You move quickly. Third shelf. Red spine. Brass corner caps. There. The ledger is heavier than you expect. You open it. Names. So many names. Written in tidy columns sorted by date. Some are marked with notes. Transferred. Deceased. Unclaimed. Others to have numbers beside them. Figures. Payments. You flip through. A name catches your eye. 1143B. U. Beside it, in neat handwriting. Acquired. 2 May. No family. Approved for extension study. Validated by RB. You stare. Not committed. Not diagnosed. Acquired. Your fingers tremble. Further down you see another name. Iris W., the seamstress. Next to her entry, de-escalated. Speech removed. You slam the book shut, pulse thudding in your ears. This place doesn't treat anyone. It collects them, markets them, repackages human suffering as observation, and bills it as progress. You return the ledger to its place. You can't risk being caught with it. But before you leave, you tear a single page, the one with your name, and fold it into your smock. As you slip out the door and descend the stairs, you feel something new settle into your chest. Anger, not fear, not confusion. Anger, and it's warm, almost welcome. You finally know what they've done to you, and now you know what you're going to do back. You return to the ward like nothing has changed. You shuffle, you murmur, you stir your broth in slow circles like someone whose mind has long since sunk beneath the surface. The nurses pass you without pause. One even pats your shoulder, mistaking your silence for submission. But inside, you are raging, and that page, your page, is folded tightly beneath your underlayer, wrapped in oilcloth and tucked between mattress stitching with the others, the button, the map, the coded notes, a growing archive of truths no one is supposed to hold. You begin to whisper to others, not all, not openly, but to the ones you know are still in there. The seamstress with the shaking hands, the old man who counts stars he can't see, Mr. Whitlow who stops rhyming long enough to mutter, the tide's turning. You test the waters, ask questions, drop hints, and what you find is terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. You're not the first. Others have tried, some failed, some vanished, but each left a mark, a map, a symbol scratched into a bedpost, a rhythm tapped into floorboards, a phrase whispered into bathwater steam. One night, as the ward sleeps, you press your lips to the gap in the wall beside your cot and whisper, "What comes next?" The response doesn't come through the wall. It comes in the morning. Your daily tonic is late. Odd. When it does arrive, it's in a plain tin cup with no nurse attached. You stare at it. The liquid inside is milky and sweet, like usual, but the surface glistens strangely. You pretend to drink, spit it into your sleeve when no one's watching. That afternoon, the girl in the bed next to you begins seizing. You call for help. You scream. Nurses rush in with straps and spoons. They call it an expected reaction. You hear them whisper the word overdose. Later, a new chart appears at the end of her bed. Blank. She doesn't speak again, and now you know. They're onto you, but not completely, not yet. So you push forward faster. You show the folded ledger page to Whitlow behind a stack of laundry. He stares at it for a long time before saying, "We need to send it out." "Out where?" you ask. "To the inspector's people. They may still be watching." "How?" He grins, that cracked, toothless grin. "Through the bakery wagon," you blink. "The bread cart?" He nods. "Delivered once a week. They think it's just flour and mould. But there's a false bottom in one of the crates. A patient built it. Long gone now. But the system still works. If someone's out there, someone real, they'll find it." That night during the delivery shuffle, you slip the page into a folded rag and place it carefully beneath a crust of bread at the bottom of the far bin. You close the lid, you step back, and you wait. 3 days later, the baker's boy returns. He's never spoken to you, never looked you in the eye. Today, he does. He hands you a broken biscuit, crumbs falling from the crack. Inside, tucked in wax paper, is a single line. We hear you. The moment you read those words, we hear you. A new kind of silence settles over you. Not fear, not disbelief, relief. Like the very walls, after all this time, might finally be listening. You tuck the biscuit paper into the hem of your smock, heart hammering. If they got the message, if someone beyond Bedlam's walls knows what's happening, then you're not alone anymore. Not entirely. But this place is nothing if not watchful. The staff senses when the air shifts, when too many patients begin to look each other in the eye for too long. That's how rumours become revolts, and Bedlam knows how to snuff out sparks before they catch. The crackdown begins quietly. Extra inspections, longer prayer sessions, more tonics distributed at odd hours. You notice that anyone who speaks above a whisper is suddenly due for therapy. Anyone who walks too fast is agitated. Anyone who smiles is labelled unstable elation. You keep your head down until the day you're reassigned again. Boiler duty, the matron says. Maintenance wing. Strange. That's not usually a patient task. You catch Nurse Halcombe's eyes as you're escorted away. She looks pale, but doesn't speak. Her hands twitch. She knows something. You're taken through the back corridors, past the kitchens, past the dispensary, through a rusted door marked Staff Only. The hallway narrows, dust coats everything. This isn't boiler duty. This is punishment. Your escort, a large orderly with a face like carved sandstone, says nothing as he leads you into a dim room with a single high window. In the centre, a cot. On the wall, leather straps. Beneath the window, a bucket and a tray with tools. You've been brought to the leeching room. They still use it here. The theory, Victorian in its cruelty, is that madness comes from bad blood. Too much, too thick, too wild in its movement. And so, they bleed it out, bit by bit, sanity by the spoonful. You try to back away. The orderly steps forward. 2 others enter, gloved and silent. You don't scream. Not yet. They don't speak. They don't explain. They simply press you down, arms extended, cuffs snapped tight against your wrists. One holds your head gently but firmly against the cot. And then, cold, the first touch of the leech. You feel it latch before you see it. A soft tug, like something kissing your skin with teeth. Another is placed on your other arm. You begin to shake, not from pain, but from the terrible quiet violation of it. The way they act like this is healing. The way they won't even meet your eyes. Blood trickles slowly down your arm. In the corner, a nurse takes notes. After 10 minutes, they remove the leeches, bloated now, sluggish. You expect them to throw them away, but no. They place them into a glass jar, one by one, gently, like sacred tools. You're untied, dizzy, cold. You may rest here, one says, but you don't. You sit up, legs trembling, and stare at the streaks of blood drying on your forearms. This wasn't about healing. This was a message. They know you're resisting, and they want to remind you your body is still theirs, but you already knew that. What they don't know? You left a mark beneath the cot with your fingernail while they strapped you down, a small crescent, and next to it, 6 slashes. The code is still spreading. You'll return to the ward before nightfall, your sleeves still damp with cold water and blood. The nurses tell the others you overheated. You don't bother correcting them. The moment you lie down, you feel it. Your body's lighter, yes, but not in any way that brings peace. More like your limbs have been siphoned. You press your hand to the underside of your mattress, check your stash. Everything's still there. But now you add something new. A scrap of your sleeve, stained at the cuff, folded neatly beside the biscuit paper. A reminder, what they take and what you survive. Over the next week, you move with more caution. You don't speak unless spoken to. You let your spoon tremble slightly in your broth. You readopt the vacant stare. At night, when the others rest or hum to themselves, you listen through the wall. The tapping hasn't returned. You miss it more than you expected. But something else appears instead. Laughter. It starts as a giggle, far down the corridor. Then a sharp cackle. Then silence again. You ask Whitlow carefully if he hears it too. He nods once, then lowers his voice. They've started treating the mirth cases again. You tilt your head. They say laughter without cause is the most dangerous kind, that it signals derangement too deep to reach. You don't say it aloud, but you've started laughing yourself. Quietly, when no one's watching. Not out of joy. Out of the sheer absurdity of it all. The gowns, the tonics, the Bible verses pinned beside bloodletting charts. The man pacing in circles for hours because he once asked about the sky. One evening, you find a new message scratched into the wood under your chamber pot. They don't know we laugh at them. There's a drawing beneath it, a simple one, a stick figure with a crown, upside down. You recognise the symbol, the same patient who drew on the bread cart months ago. The underground still breathes, and now there's more than survival in your chest. There's momentum. Then, a shift. The new girl arrives. She's barely 16, wild-eyed, wrists bandaged in fresh cotton. She stares at everything like it might bite her. They assign her the bed across from yours. Her name is Rose. You wait 2 days before speaking to her. When you do, it's simple. "Do you dream?" you whisper. She nods slowly. "What do you see?" Her voice is raw. A staircase, covered in water. You lean in. "Does it go up?" She blinks. Then it sinks. You feel the chill ripple through your ribs. Rose has been here before. Maybe not in this place, but somewhere like it. Somewhere cold and quiet and trimmed in brass. You slide her a folded scrap of cloth. On it, a crescent and 2 lines. She doesn't ask what it means. She just hides it. That night she taps once against the bed frame. You reply. A new connection begins. You thought you were done growing roots. You were wrong. Your name is called again. Not shouted down the corridor, not summoned in a rush of boots and orders, but read aloud, formally, as if from a list. Case 1143B, to be presented for examination. That word, presented, catches you. You recognise it from whispers, from old entries in the red ledger. It doesn't mean healing, it means spectacle. You're cleaned, scrubbed harder than usual, your hair combed flat, your smock replaced with a freshly laundered one. No stains, no tears. Nurse Halcombe buttons it herself, hands trembling ever so slightly. You try to catch her eye. She avoids yours. Down the corridor, past the administrative wing, you're led into a different chamber, high-ceilinged, warm with the thick scent of smoke and wax. A lecture hall built like a small theatre. Semicircular benches rise up on all sides, filled with students in white coats, notebooks ready, eyes hungry. In the centre, a raised wooden platform, a padded chair bolted to the floor. You've become the morning's lesson. They call it demonstration therapy. A chance for future doctors to observe live cases, to learn from patients in flux. You're expected to speak, to react, to be examined like a frog with pins through its legs. Dr. Rigby presides today. He wears his Sunday waistcoat and carries a thin silver pointer, which he taps rhythmically against his palm as he speaks. Case 1143B, he announces. Female, mid-20s, diagnosed melancholia with compulsive ideation. Early signs of delusional coordination. Note the calm exterior. He says delusional coordination like it's a crime. You sit stiffly in the chair. The lights above are gaslit, too bright. You can't see anyone's faces, only the shapes of their heads. Their pens scratch like beetles on bark. No one speaks to you. They speak about you. She's a classic case of suppression, one student suggests. No, another counters. Her eyes are too focused. Hysterical alertness, likely trauma-linked. Dr. Rigby nods, pleased. Very good. Note how the patient's stillness masks internal disturbance. You want to laugh, but you don't. Not yet. Then comes the second part, the prodding. They don't touch you, not at first. They ask questions. Questions designed to trap. How often do you sleep? Do you hear voices? Do you believe your thoughts are your own? You answer slowly, calmly, no more than anyone else. Only when people speak. Yes. Dr. Rigby smirks. Patients often mimic rational speech, but true madness reveals itself in gaps. He turns to the students. Observe. And then, without warning, he slams his hand on the table beside you. You don't flinch. You've seen worse. Felt worse. But he nods anyway. Delayed response. Indicative. They write it down. Now he does touch you, takes your hand, turns it palm up. He lifts a small tuning fork, strikes it, presses it against your wrist. The vibration hums through your bones. He watches your eyes. See that? Flicker of discomfort. The body betrays what the tongue conceals. You lock your gaze on the overhead flame. You say nothing. This isn't an examination. It's theatre. You're the cautionary tale in a room of future gatekeepers, but they underestimate you. Because while they diagnose you, while they scribble and nod and label you as broken, you're studying them. Their voices, their postures. Which ones hesitate before speaking? Which ones look away? You're building your next map, in plain sight. The performance doesn't end after the questions. Dr. Rigby circles you like a vulture with a medical degree. His tone grows more theatrical as he speaks to the students, less interested in you now than in their wide-eyed scribbles. Note her composure. Many melancholics will show no overt signs of disruption until provoked. But underneath, he taps the side of your skull too hard. The mind distorts reality. It must be examined, penetrated even. He motions to the assistant standing nearby. A tray is rolled forward. You recognize it instantly. Galvanic probes, small brass rods connected to a humming battery box buzzing faintly. A murmur runs through the students. Electrostimulation, Rigby announces. A mild current, applied to key pressure points. This helps gauge emotional reactivity, muscular irregularities, and, most importantly, levels of internal resistance. You freeze. They're going to shock you, not to treat you, to observe you. You glance at the assistant. He's barely older than you. His hands shake as he picks up the rods, his eyes flicking toward yours. You hold his gaze, not pleading, not afraid, just calm. Because this too is part of the machine. And machines break when they're pushed hard enough. The rods press against your temples. Rigby nods. A crank turns. The first jolt is small, like static. Your shoulders twitch. The students lean in. The second is stronger. It rattles your teeth, tightens your jaw. You breathe slowly through it, eyes wide open. She has an unusually high tolerance, Rigby says, or possibly diminished nerve sensitivity. Third jolt. Your fingers curl. Your vision prickles at the edges. The humming grows louder in your skull than in the wires. And then, something inside you snaps. Not your bones, your silence. You laugh. Softly at first, then louder. The students stiffen, pens still. One chuckles awkwardly, another frowns. Rigby stops the machine. He scowls. She's dissociating, a textbook spiral. But you keep laughing, because the irony is too rich. You're strapped to a chair, shocked like a barnyard experiment, and they think they're the sane ones. When the laughter fades, you look at the younger student in the crowd, maybe 20, pale, eyes wide. Is this what you imagined? You say softly. Your noble profession? Rigby slams the table again. She's regressing. He waves for the session to end. You're unstrapped and led away, your legs unsteady but your spine straight. Outside, in the corridor, Nurse Halcombe is waiting. She doesn't speak, but her eyes dart toward your arms. She sees the tremble, the rawness behind your grin. She slips something into your palm as she steadies you, a scrap of paper, folded tight. Back in your cell, you wait until the gaslight dims, then unfold it. Next storm. Look for the garden gate. You blink. The asylum hasn't had a real storm in months, but tomorrow you've heard clouds are coming, and now you know where the cracks in the walls really are. Not in your mind, in theirs. The storm rolls in by mid-afternoon, soft at first, a distant murmur of thunder far beyond the asylum walls. But by evening it has teeth. Rain lashes the high windows in sheets. Wind hisses through cracks in the stone like the building itself is breathing differently. The gaslights flicker, a perfect night for disruption. You've counted the steps, marked the doors, memorized the shift rotations, and now, with Nurse Halcombe's note in your palm, you wait for your moment. The patients are restless. Even the drugged ones stir beneath their sheets. Thunder has a way of waking old memories. Screams echo faintly down the west ward. Someone thinks God is punishing the building. Another believes it's finally Judgment Day. You don't disagree. During evening meal distribution, you fake a coughing fit near the hallway junction. Violent, messy, convincing enough that a nurse rushes to fetch water. When she turns, you slip out of the queue, shoes silent on the damp floor. You move quickly through the rear corridor, past the disused laundry chute, left at the rusted iron sink, right where the walls narrow and the plaster crumbles like dried skin. Then you see it, the garden gate. It's small, half-height, set into a low arch behind the main greenhouse, almost invisible beneath the ivy. A locked relic from when the asylum kept herbs for natural tonics. The patient stopped tending the garden years ago. The door has since become a myth, but the key is in your pocket. You reach in, fingers closing around cold brass, the same key you found hidden in the boiler room weeks ago. You slide it into the lock. It sticks. You jiggle, turn, click. The door groans open. Outside, the garden is wild, overgrown, half swallowed by thorns and nettles, but it smells like real air, wet soil, broken leaves, the sharp bite of ozone. For the first time in months, you're no longer under a ceiling. You don't bolt, not yet. You walk softly along the stone path, past the twisted remnants of a lavender bed, past a collapsed trellis. There, tucked beneath an old bench, wrapped in oilskin, a bundle. You crouch, heart pounding. Inside, clothing. Not asylum linen, civilian garb, a rough wool coat, a shirt, loose trousers, boots, scuffed but sturdy. And at the bottom, folded tight, a parchment note. Dress. Wait for the second bell. Watch the window. You take everything. You return through the gate, careful to relock it from the inside. You hide the bundle beneath a loose floorboard beneath your bed, the one you pried open months ago with a spoon handle. Then you lie back, and you wait. The first bell comes with a crash. Lightning strikes the east wall. The ward gaslight gutters out. Nurses hurry to relight lanterns. Doors creak. Feet shuffle. The second bell, the one you're waiting for, rings faintly, almost hidden in the storm's roar. A softer chime like something dropped by accident. You rise. You change. You take only what you need. The map, the code, the paper from the inspector, the biscuit message. You move to the window, and there, for just a second, lightning flashes. And you see her, Nurse Halcombe, standing by the hedgerow, waiting. You don't hesitate. The bundle under your arm, the coat clutched close. You slide the window open with hands steadied by adrenaline. It creaks, loudly. You freeze, but no footsteps follow. The storm covers you now. Wind howls like a warning. Rain soaks through your collar in seconds. But it doesn't matter. You lower yourself out slowly, feet finding the slippery ledge, then the crooked drain pipe. You climb down like someone who's never coming back up. Your boots hit the sodden ground. You run. The overgrown garden grabs at your legs, thorns catching on cloth and skin. Lightning flares above like a camera flash, capturing your silhouette in motion. You duck beneath a sagging willow tree, cross the cracked stone path and reach the hedgerow. She's there. Nurse Halcombe. Coat pulled tight, curls plastered to her face, eyes wild with urgency. She grabs your hand, doesn't speak. She leads. Past the old chapel ruin, now roofless. Through the collapsed fence behind the abandoned tool shed. Down a ravine thick with nettles. At the base, a hole. A culvert once part of the asylum's drainage system. Long forgotten, half collapsed, exactly wide enough for one person. "I won't fit," she says, shouting over the storm. "But you will. Follow the pipe for 30 feet. It comes out near the river." You shake your head. "Come with me." Her expression twists. She wants to. God, she wants to. "I've sent too many," she says, voice breaking. "Someone has to stay behind, to keep it open." She presses something into your hand, a small paper envelope sealed with wax. "Give this to the inspector's board," she says. "They're real. The address is inside." Then softer. "Go. Now." You hesitate just 1 second longer. Then you dive in. The tunnel is wet, rank with mildew and old things that should not be named. You crawl through blackness, hands slipping in mud, ribs scraping against stone. The sound of thunder fades behind you. Ahead, light. Faint. You push harder. Your fingers find empty air. And then suddenly you're out. On the riverbank. Just trees and rain and space. You collapse onto the grass and laugh. Not loud, not mad. Just free. You stand, shaking, and run. Miles blur. The wind roars. The world opens up like a book you thought had been burned. At dawn, you reach the edge of a village. Shoes ruined. Face streaked with dirt. You knock on the first door with a light in the window. The woman answers, startled. "I need to post something," you say hoarsely. "Please." She stares, then nods. You hand her the envelope. 3 days later, Bedlam receives a letter bearing the crest of the Board of Public Oversight. An inspection is scheduled, unannounced, and beneath the floorboards of the ward, still hidden inside a stitched cloth pouch, your name remains, Case 1143B. But beside it now, in scratched ink from an unknown hand, escaped, witness, alive. The letter arrives before breakfast. The matron receives it in her private office, its envelope thick and pressed with the red seal of the Board of Public Oversight. The kind of letter that makes hands tremble and tea go cold. She doesn't open it right away. She finishes her cup, stiff-backed, composed. Then quietly she rings the bell. Within minutes the asylum is in motion. Floors scrubbed, patients combed and rebuttoned, tonic carts replenished, staff uniforms starched. Everything unpleasant, everything true, hidden behind curtains or locked doors. The general ward smells of bleach and boiled oats. Extra blankets are laid at the foot of each bed. Patients are given mild stimulants so they appear alert. Even the windows are washed. For the first time in years. The staff knows the drill, because this has happened before. The inspector is coming. But what they don't know is that this inspector isn't just coming to check the ledgers, or nod politely through staged interviews. He's coming with your envelope in hand, and your name on his list. You aren't there to see it, of course. You're miles away by now, hidden in a small attic above a baker's shop on the edge of Kent. The owner, a wiry woman with ink-stained fingers and an old scar across her chin, used to be a nurse herself. She left the system after what she called the locked door incident. She never explains. She doesn't have to. Each night you write. Pages and pages, memories, maps, names. You draw diagrams of the wards. You recall the codes. You list every patient who left and never returned. But your hands still shake when you sleep. Because even with freedom, the sounds stay. The key turning in the lock, the hum of the battery box, the way silence grows teeth in the dark. Back in Bedlam, the inspector arrives under a grey sky. He's not alone. 2 board officials accompany him, along with a clerk from the Ministry of Health. They wear tailored coats, polished boots, and carry more questions than the staff is used to. They don't start in the offices, they start in the ward. The inspector, older than you remembered, but sharper now, walks between the beds, asking quiet questions. He speaks gently, listens long, takes notes in a black leather book. He doesn't flinch at the vacant stares or the shaking hands, but he notices everything. The patched mattresses, the bruised wrists, the long gaps in the patient charts. He lingers at your old bed, his eyes narrowing at the worn groove in the wood, left by a finger scratching the same crescent again and again. The matron follows him closely. When he asks about the leaching room, she says it's not in current use. He nods, but he knows. The day wears on. The ledger is requested. It takes nearly an hour for it to appear, and when it does, there's a page missing. The matron shrugs. Pages deteriorate. It's old paper. The inspector doesn't reply, but his clerk notes it. That night, an emergency meeting is called. Not for treatment protocols, for damage control, because the staff suspects what's coming next. Not another quiet report filed away in some dusty archive, but a formal inquiry. The emergency meeting is held behind closed doors just past midnight. The staff gather. Doctors, matrons, senior nurses, all speaking in hushed tones, though the patients are sedated and the doors barred. Candles flicker on a long mahogany table. Papers rustle. Tempers rise. They know what the inspector saw. The missing page. The bruises. The overused restraint charts. The unexplained deaths. And worst of all, your escape. Dr. Rigby is the first to speak. We must present this as an isolated failure. One patient, one leak. We reinforce our procedures, realign documentation. The board will not shut down the entire institution over a single breach. But Matron Gray's voice is flat. They will if that breach speaks. A silence follows. Some glance toward Dr. Bellamy. His fingers twitch against his knee. His jaw is locked tight. She won't make it far, he says. It's a harsh world for people like her. Fragile. Unwell. But no one nods. Because you didn't escape like a frightened rabbit. You vanished like someone with a plan. And now, the structure, the lie they've all upheld, is beginning to tilt. Back in the ward, the patients sense it. Routine has shifted. Tensions hang in the air like thick fog. There are fewer punishments, fewer tonics. Meals are hotter. Nurses smile too often, but it doesn't comfort anyone. Because even the medicated ones know, when the smiles come too late, something is wrong. In the east wing, someone tapes a crescent to the underside of a lunch tray. In the laundry room, a spare key is hidden beneath the soap barrel. In the cellar, a message appears scrawled in charcoal on a pipe. You don't need permission to leave. The inspector stays longer than expected. He speaks to more patients, demands staff rotation logs, requests the key books. Then, on the fourth day, he disappears. No carriage, no note. The clerk says he was called away. But Whitlow hears a guard mutter. No one called him. He just stopped showing up. You learn of this a week later, reading a smuggled letter delivered inside a folded bread crust. The letter doesn't say, disappeared. It says, unreachable. And now you know the machine is fighting back. Not through scandal, through silence. They're cutting away the rot not to heal it, but to hide it. But what they don't know, what they never understood, is that this place was never made of bricks and gates alone. It's made of stories, and those can travel further than any escapee. So you write faster and bolder. You send copies of your testimony to places the asylum's influence can't reach. Local parishes, pamphlet printers, doctors' colleges, even a small newspaper in Bristol known for scandal and dissent. The first letter comes back published under a pseudonym. I survived the quiet madness, a patient's tale from behind asylum walls. It spreads, slowly but surely. Inside the asylum, someone carves the title into a bedpost, a quiet act of rebellion. You're no longer just a patient, you're a name, you're a witness. And whether the inspector returns or not, the world now knows one crucial thing. Bedlam leaks. The ward no longer feels like a ward. It feels like a stage between acts, everyone waiting, breath held for what comes next. The nurses are tight-lipped. The doctors move in pairs. Even the orderlies avoid the patient's eyes now, as if they suspect that behind every vacant stare is a secret being kept. Because there are rumours that the inspector never left on his own, that a patient escaped and lived to tell, that names are appearing on walls where none should be. You're gone, but not gone. Your absence echoes louder than your presence ever did. Mr. Whitlow starts humming again, low and rhythmic, the same phrase over and over. A code. The others begin to follow suit. Even the soft cases, the ones who haven't spoken in months, tap their cups, scratch at their bedsheets, whisper into pillows when no one's listening. Bedlam is waking up. But the institution doesn't sleep easily. It retaliates. Enter the rehabilitated. They appear on the ward like new furniture. Patients who were once silent, now cheerful. Too cheerful. Their eyes wide, their movements smooth, their hands always folded. One used to scream every night for his mother. Now he thanks the staff after every meal. Another once ripped up hymn books and ate the pages. Now she prays aloud before bed. They are calm, polished, vacant. At first, the others whisper of miracles, but you knew better, because what the staff calls rehabilitation, you remember as extension study. It's written on your own red ledger page. These aren't miracles, they're results, engineered through silence, sedation, and erasure. And now the improved patients are used as examples. They're what healing looks like, Rigby says during morning review. But no one looks convinced, because one of them, an older man named Elias, was once part of the underground. He knew the code, shared rations, hid notes beneath soap cakes. Now he sits with folded hands and says nothing, until one morning during chapel service he stands up, walks to the front of the room and begins laughing. Not wild, not maniacal, just steady, like he's remembered something. And then he says, loudly, clearly, "She was right." The nurses move quickly. They drag him away, but not before someone slips a scrap of paper into the heel of his boot. Later, that paper is passed bed to bed, hidden in cuffs, stitched into seams. It reads, "The gate's still open." The matron doubles the inspections. One of the laughers is sent to the isolation wing. A new doctor appears, stern, clean-shaven, colder than Rigby ever was. His name is Dr. Kellen. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, he refers to patients as subjects. You'd think the others might crumble under the pressure. Instead, they organise. They revive the old signals, rearrange furniture to spell symbols, tap codes into the walls with shoes. Rose, the girl with the dreams, starts drawing crescent shapes into her porridge with a spoon. The fire spreads, not in shouts, in quiet rebellion. Even the walls know it now, because when the new doctor passes by the old observation room, there's a message scratched into the stone just beneath the gas lamp. The lunatics aren't the only ones running the asylum anymore. The staff tighten their grip. Mealtimes are shortened, bath schedules doubled. Any excuse to isolate, to separate, to break the quiet lines forming between patients. Anyone caught whispering is reassigned. Anyone humming is dosed heavier, but it's too late. Because now the resistance isn't just memory, it's movement. And it spreads in ways no straps or tonics can contain. One afternoon, during tonic rounds, Nurse Halcombe drops her tray. Ceramic crashes across the floor. Everyone turns. She looks straight at the matron and says, "Apologies, my hands are shaking today." It sounds like nothing. But the phrase, "my hands are shaking," was once used by the earliest patient-led circle to signal a false medication delivery. Everyone hears it, and they remember. That night, 4 patients skip their dose. 2 fake seizures. One pours hers into her boot. The 4th, a boy barely 20, distracts his nurse by screaming, "The window's leaking light again," until she drops the cup. Even those who can't speak show resistance, by sitting on the wrong side of the room, by folding their linens backwards, by blinking in triplets. The language is alive. You learn of this through Whitlow's latest message, smuggled inside the spine of a discarded book of hymns sent to your new safe house. It's barely holding together, ink bleeding from moisture and time, but every word is a heartbeat. We're still here. Your laugh set it off. The gate's still open. Kellen suspects. Elias sent below. Halcombe holding steady. Rose is drawing maps in soap again. We don't need the door. We are the fire. Hold. You sit in the candlelight rereading it, and you realise something vital. Escape was never the end. It was the beginning of the breach. Back in Bedlam, Kellen grows suspicious. He stops speaking in front of patients altogether, starts watching from doorways. He brings in his own nurses, ones no one recognises. Whitlow calls them the cleaners. They have no name tags. They don't blink enough. One of them finds a scrap of cloth in the laundry, stitched with a crescent and 7 slashes. The patient responsible disappears by nightfall. No record, no chart, not even her empty bed remains. Just a chair, turned toward the window, as if she left by melting into the sky. But that doesn't stop the others, because the chairs have symbols now, tiny ones, burned into the wood by hidden matches or scratched with buckles, signs of alignment, signals of where you sit in the movement. The cleaners begin rearranging the furniture daily. It only takes hours before the patients put it all back. And when the staff return in the morning, the beds in the West Wing have been pushed into the shape of a crescent. Again. The matron demands to know who did it. No one speaks. She slaps a boy. Still, no one speaks. Because now they've learned something crucial. The machine runs on fear, and the moment you stop being afraid, the gears begin to grind. In your safe house, you finish your latest dispatch. 15 pages detailing names, timelines, phrases. You tuck it into a packet bound for London's Health Commission. Your fingers tremble, but not from fear, from anticipation. Because somewhere, right now, someone in Bedlam is drawing a crescent in their tea. And they're smiling. You don't know how long the inspector has been gone. Weeks, maybe. Enough time for the board's silence to grow heavy. Enough time for the matron to start locking her office at all hours. For Dr. Kellen to bring in extra staff from the central facility. Strangers in white coats. No names, no smiles. But the resistance grows anyway. Because truth, once spoken aloud, even once, echoes. And yours is echoing through walls, through floors, through wrists tapping bed frames. Still, the asylum fights back. It always does. They begin intercepting messages. The girl who used to hum code during sewing duty is reassigned to the quiet room, a place so soundproofed you forget what your own voice feels like. She returns 5 days later without a stitch of memory. She forgets her name, her age, but not you. When you're mentioned, your number, your mark, your laugh, her hands twitch. That's how they know it's still working. The idea of you has become stronger than your presence, which is why, next, they come for the letters. Every parcel now arrives slashed open. Pages go missing. Even biscuit deliveries are snapped in half before being handed over. One poor man receives his loaf crumbled into dust. He cries not from hunger, but because it was the only way his wife said hello. But Whitlow adapts. He teaches the others to stitch messages into pillow seams, to speak through coughs, to tap out rhymes in Morse with their knees during prayer. And Rose, young Rose with her ink-dark eyes, goes a step further. She begins to draw again. Not pictures, not faces, maps, but not on paper. She draws with soap. Every night she carves a different part of the asylum into the thin bar she's allowed. One night, the West Wing. The next, the underground chamber, then the kitchens, then the disused chapel where they keep the broken furniture. Each bar is hidden inside the cistern tank of the third lavatory, and every week someone replaces them, because someone out there is collecting them. You receive your first soap map by accident, wrapped in a bundle of rags meant for kindling. You don't even notice at first. Then your hand brushes the bar, your thumb feels the ridges, you hold it to the candlelight, corridors, cells, Symbols. Rose's silent scream pressed into tallow. You sit on the floor and trace it until the candle burns out. She's telling you where to go next, but you're not sure where next is anymore, because the stories spreading from your dispatches are growing legs. One by one, anonymous testimonials appear in leaflets and gazettes. I was misdiagnosed at 13. They told my father I was dead. They sold my diagnosis to the medical college. They studied my silence. Each one a flare in the dark, each one a match to the kindling of public doubt. At the asylum, you're no longer spoken of aloud, but you hear it. The way the nurses flinch when someone laughs, the way Dr. Kellen's jaw tightens when someone dares to speak with clarity. Because what they fear most isn't your voice, it's your memory. It's raining again. Inside the asylum, the dripping intensifies the silence. Water seeps in through cracked ceiling tiles, trickling down the walls like the institution itself is weeping. And still, somehow, it holds. The beds remain filled. The staff remain stern. The ledgers remain blank where it matters, but the cracks are widening. That evening during medicine rounds, a nurse spills a vial. Not just any vial, the violet glass, the one reserved for patients deemed non-compliant. It shatters across the ward floor, the sharp chemical reek curling upward. No one dares to move until old Mr. Finch starts clapping. Once, then again. A slow, deliberate rhythm. Within seconds, the whole ward joins in, not wildly, not rebelliously, but rhythmically. Clap, clap, clap. A funeral march for silence. The nurse drops the tray. Her eyes fill with tears. It's not just defiance, it's unity. That night, the ward is locked early. Rations are halved. Half the patients are dosed heavy and left mumbling in their sleep. But in the east corridor, in the linen closet, Rose is whispering. She's whispering coordinates, and Whitlow is writing them on his thigh with a stolen pencil stub. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, a wrench is hidden behind a loose grate, and above the eaves, someone's carved a message that can only be read in candlelight. No institution survives the truth. You receive another parcel, but this time it's not wrapped in secrecy. It arrives in plain brown paper, addressed to the pseudonym you've used in your published stories. Inside is a single bar of soap, untouched. No carvings, no marks, until you submerge it in water. And there, like a ghost rising from a grave, the shape emerges, a gate, and next to it, a figure, small, slight, barefoot. You don't need to guess who it is. Rose is telling you she's ready. They're ready. Back at the asylum, a new name appears in the ledger, Patient Zero. There's no birth date, no origin, just that phrase. Kellen knows it refers to you. You can feel his hand tightening across miles, trying to erase your shadow with ink. But he's already lost control, because the cleaners are being watched now, their routines charted, their uniforms inspected. One has had their boots switched in the night, a tiny, perfect prank that sends ripples through the staff. No one trusts anyone anymore, not even themselves. Matron Grey speaks less and less. She's begun talking to portraits, whispering to the long-dead founder whose oil-painted eyes hang over the dining hall. Her voice is thin, cracked like the floor tiles. They're not afraid anymore, she says. It's not a complaint, it's a confession. And far away, you sit by candlelight, map in hand, pages folded, boots laced. You don't know the end yet, but you know this. The fire is burning. The patients are the wind. And this time, the storm is theirs. The storm begins, quietly, with a spoon. It's morning. Dr. Kellen strides into the West Wing for inspections, his clipboard clutched like a blade. His shoes echo sharp against the tile, his expression unreadable. Everything appears orderly. Beds made, patients seated, the usual fog of sedation thick in the air. But then, as he reaches the end of the hall, he sees it. A small metal spoon standing upright in a bowl of porridge, balanced perfectly. Impossible. His eyes scan the room. Nobody moves, except Rose. She smiles, Not wide, not manic. Just enough to say, "We're done pretending." That same hour, Whitlow fakes a fall in the stairwell. While orderlies rush to help, a second patient slips a folded page behind a baseboard. Downstairs, a nurse finds her keys have been swapped, replaced with identical replicas carved in soap and painted with boot polish. It's happening. Not an escape, not yet, but a test. A push against the boundaries of routine, seeing where the weaknesses are, finding the cracks in the old iron cage. Kellen reacts swiftly. Too swiftly. He doubles staff rotations, reassigns Rose to the infirmary, moves Whitlow to the east wing, away from the others, and he brings back the restraints. He calls it restoration of discipline. But everyone knows what it really is. Fear. The straps are leather, sun-cracked and too stiff. They haven't been used in months. When they buckle down across wrists, the ward goes silent. No one fights, yet no one breaks. Because the defiance is no longer in movement. It's in stillness. They lie still, not because they've surrendered, but because they know the routine, the smell of disinfectant, the creak of the cartwheels. They know what's next, and they know how to wait. Rose isn't idle in the infirmary. She copies keys from memory, draws floor plans in chalk beneath cots, learns which guards talk too much, which ones sneak smokes near the old well, which ones never check the bolts properly on the south gate. And Whitlow, he uses his new wing wisely. He's slower now, older, but he listens, gathers names, builds alliances. He begins teaching new patients the code, a double blink for no, a scratch on the thigh for listen. He writes nothing down, everything committed to memory and shared only when needed. Because he knows the plan has to come soon, before the locks change, before the inspectors stop listening, before the system closes its mouth again. And far beyond the stone walls you sit in a friend's attic in Bristol, folding your final letter. It's not written in ink. It's written in blood, taken from a shallow prick on your thumb, just enough to stain the words, because this time the story has to live, not just as words on a page, but as truth that bleeds. You address it to no one, and to everyone. You tuck it inside a plain envelope, unmarked, and send it into the world, because the storm is no longer waiting. It's on the edge of release. The envelope travels quietly. No fanfare, no courier's urgency. Just a slow crawl through dusty sorting rooms and sleepy postman's hands. It's addressed to no person, no office, only a phrase, for anyone who still believes in waking up. Somewhere in London, a tired clerk opens it during a second cup of tea. He reads half a page before forgetting to blink. Somewhere in Kent, a printer recognises the code carved faintly into the bottom margin. A crescent and 5 notches, a signal, a call to arms. Somewhere in Wales, a journalist with a limp and too many ghosts starts typing again. And in Bedlam, the day begins with thunder. Not metaphorical. Real thunder. A storm brews overhead, thick and heavy, as if the sky itself knows what's coming. It begins with a rumour that the governor of another asylum up north has been forced to resign after a stack of patient letters was made public, that newspapers are using the word inhumane, that families are asking questions. Dr. Kellen reads the headlines through narrowed eyes. He burns them after, orders that the chapel be locked indefinitely. All outside correspondence paused until further notice, but the staff are faltering. You can see it in the cleaner who forgets to check under cots, the matron who leaves her keys unattended during evening rounds, the nurse whose hands shake as she signs the medicine log. The cracks aren't just in the walls anymore, they're in the people. Rose makes her move first. One quiet morning she walks calmly into the linen closet, closes the door and vanishes. No alarm sounds, because nothing appears broken, no window forced, no door ajar, only a damp footprint, a laced boot left behind, turned on its side like a discarded question. Kellen panics, orders a search of every wing, every cell, every cupboard. He drags Whitlow into the old surgery room, demands names. Whitlow laughs, and this time it's not to mock. It's because he hears something Kellen does not. A bell, faint but clear. One of the chapel bells, long believed broken. One single chime, and then another. Someone is in the chapel. They rush down. The chapel is lit with dozens of candles, stolen bits of wax relit after months in hiding, and carved into the altar wood clear and defiant are the words, "She is gone, and more will follow." The matron faints. The cleaners scatter to every hall. Kellen stands frozen at the chapel doors, fists clenched so tight his knuckles split. Because the message isn't from one patient. It's from all of them. He calls for full lockdown, but it's too late. Rose is gone. Whitlow begins to chant softly, an old hymn twisted into nonsense. Others join in. The walls tremble. Somewhere in London your story hits the newsstands. Somewhere in Parliament someone asks a question that can't be unasked. And back in the heart of the asylum, where so many thought silence would reign forever, a patient pulls back her curtain and smiles at the storm. It's the beginning of the end. You don't know it yet, not fully, but it's in the air. It's in the way people start saying your name without whispering, in the way editors no longer redact Asylum from your headlines, in the way the candlelight doesn't feel quite so necessary anymore. The story is out, not just yours, theirs. Stories of girls mislabeled as hysterics for dancing barefoot in fields, of boys diagnosed as feeble-minded for stuttering once, of widows institutionalized for weeping too long, of left-handed children, two curious men, grieving mothers, and women who dared to read poetry after supper. One paper prints the headline, "Bedlam Revisited. Are our hospitals curing or burying?" The name Bedlam, once a whispered threat, has become a symbol, and symbols are dangerous. They can't be locked in a cell. And back inside that cell, Dr. Kellen begins to unravel. His lectures to staff turn frantic. Scribbles cover his ledgers. Notations, warnings, suspicions. He spends hours in the surveillance room watching the grainy shadows of patients shuffle across hallways. But he's not watching for escape. He's watching for code. He's convinced that every blink is a message, every cough a signal, every smudge on the glass a secret waiting to be decoded. He's not wrong. But his paranoia makes him careless, and one day he forgets to lock the records room. Rose, yes, Rose, who's not vanished but merely shifted, slips in through the laundry chute. Her hands are practiced now, fast, nimble. She copies documents, treatment logs, sedation records, transfer orders without dates. She finds a list of names crossed out in red ink, deemed incurable, no family, fit for experimentation. She copies that too. She hides it not in soap nor in seams, but in the pages of the Bible in the chapel, the very one Dr. Kellen uses to deliver Sunday sermons on obedience. By the time he opens it again, the pages will be gone. In his place, an exact replica. Except every verse now begins with the word "listen." Outside the asylum, the public's eyes grow wider. A young barrister petitions for access to inspection reports. A group of mothers gathers outside the gates, holding photographs of the daughters they were told had relapsed. And in Parliament, a quiet MP from Yorkshire places a sealed envelope onto the desk of the Health Minister. Inside, your full report, maps, logs, and one single line written in ink darker than the rest. They are not mad, the system is. Back inside the asylum, a patient writes that very phrase across the wall of the West Wing. With her fingernail, it takes all night. But she doesn't stop until the last letter is scratched in. In the morning a nurse sees it. She doesn't report it. She simply brings the patient breakfast and very gently lays a fresh spoon beside her plate. A real one, not tin. The walls are speaking now. They hum with something old, something loud, not in volume, but in truth. The kind of sound that makes those in power itch. That morning Matron Grey resigns. No announcement, no ceremony. She simply lays her keys on the edge of the nurses' station and walks out the front gate. Past guards, too stunned to ask for papers, past staff who pretend not to see, and past a gardener who tips his hat solemn as a priest. Later, Kellen will claim she vanished, but everyone will remember her walk, and still the institution staggers forward, because it always does, until it doesn't. At lunch, the kitchen forgets to deliver food to the East Wing, or maybe it doesn't forget. No one protests. The patients sit, silent, hungry, and then, one by one, they start to pray. But it's not a prayer anyone recognises. It's a chant. Words from different corners of the asylum, from poems once recited in the attic, from lullabies hummed under breath, from stories carved into soap and scraped into bedposts. The staff try to interrupt, but they can't, because there's nothing to punish. No raised fists, no shouted demands, just voices, hundreds of them, lifted together. And outside, the gates are opening. For the first time in months, the outside world walks in. A man with a clipboard and too many buttons on his vest appears. Behind him, 3 inspectors, a photographer, and, most shocking of all, a doctor from another asylum. Not sent by Kellen, but sent for him. He's been reported. The term unfit for medical leadership is muttered, but no one dares say it louder. Kellen tries to bluster, demands warrants, authority, but no one listens, because behind the visitors a crowd has gathered, former patients, relatives, reporters, and somewhere, far in the back, cloaked in a simple grey coat and cap, you. You don't wave, you don't speak, but someone near you whispers your name, and someone else nods, not in recognition, in agreement. Inside, the inspectors begin to walk the halls. They take notes, photographs. They speak to patients, not as subjects, but as witnesses. Kellen follows them like a ghost, his voice losing authority with each step. When they enter the West Wing, they find the wall, the one with the words carved with a fingernail, and instead of scrubbing it clean, they photograph it. That night, no one sleeps. Not because of fear, but because sleep suddenly feels like something that can wait. You slip away before the sun rises. No grand farewell. Just a slow walk past the place that tried to swallow you. A place now coughing up truth with every creak in its bricks. At the gates, a child hands you a folded note. You open it once you're halfway down the lane. Inside, a tiny drawing of a spoon standing upright in a bowl of porridge, balanced, perfect, and beneath it, in scrawled ink, we're still here. You don't go home right away. Instead, you wander. Through fog-thick streets, past bakeries just opening their shutters, past newsboys shouting about scandals that have nothing to do with asylums, yet. Past a flower stand where a girl with ink-stained fingers hums a hymn you know came from the chapel. You wander because your body doesn't yet believe it's over. And maybe it isn't, but something has shifted. In the week following the inspection, the asylum is no longer sealed off. Letters are delivered again. Not all of them, but some. Enough. Inside, Rose reads one on her cot. Smuggled in, no one knows how. It's unsigned, but it's clear who wrote it. You were right. You always were. I only wish I'd listened sooner. Keep going. We're watching now. We see you. She folds it once, presses it to her lips, then tears it up and flushes the pieces down the lavatory. Nothing to be kept. Nothing to be used against her. She smiles for the first time in days. The staff notice. Not just her smile, but the growing quiet. Not the heavy, weighted silence of dread, but a light, suspended calm. As if the whole asylum is exhaling. It's not that things are good, but they are. Possible. The old routines are unravelling. Nurses now carry their ledgers in the open, not tucked beneath coats. The chapel stays unlocked. The hymnals have been returned, and though many pages are missing, they're sung anyway. And on one Tuesday morning an unthinkable thing occurs. The patients are invited outside, not all of them, but enough to raise eyebrows. They step cautiously into the yard, blinking like new foals in the sun. The grass is patchy, the benches rotted through, but it might as well be Eden. Whitlow walks slowly beside a younger patient. His gait is stiff. He's not been well. But his eyes are bright, and he leans forward when the boy points to a robin hopping along the fence. "They eat worms," Whitlow mutters. The boy gasps. "That's awful." Whitlow shrugs. "So's confinement." In the administration wing, Kellen sits alone in his office. He hasn't spoken publicly since the inspection. The inspectors recommended temporary leave. He refused. No one forced him. And yet, the power has shifted. He issues memos that no one reads. He schedules meetings no one attends. He signs orders that disappear in the margins. He is still here, but he is not present. He is, at last, contained. Rose doesn't ask about him anymore. She's focused on something else. A new patient arrived yesterday, barely older than a child, labelled melancholic, as if grief were a disease. She doesn't speak, but she listens. Rose sits beside her every evening, brushing her hair with slow strokes, and when no one is watching, she slips a folded paper into the girl's palm. Not a plan, a poem, one she composed herself, about a bird and a gate and a sky so wide it makes your lungs hurt. Outside the asylum, your life reshapes itself. You don't become famous. There are no medals, no parades, no invitations to speak at polished podiums, but your letters are read, your documents copied, your name whispered in courtrooms, coffee houses, and quiet corners of editorial meetings. One morning, you pass a bookstore and see a pamphlet in the window titled, "Inside Bedlam, a Nurse's Testimony." You didn't write it, but you recognize the turn of phrase in the second paragraph, and the scratchy ink in the margins. Rose. She's still inside, but not silent. The story has found its way into hands that matter. Politicians, reformers, even clergy who once blessed locked doors now write sermons about dignity and the soul. A subcommittee is formed, a funding review launched. One law, quietly, carefully, tweaked. It's not a revolution, but it's a wedge in the wall. Inside the asylum, change is slow, painfully so. Some orderlies resist. Some nurses still whisper the word liars behind closed doors. Kellen's shadow lingers longer than he does, but the patients notice the shift. They see the door to the records room now has a clear glass panel. They notice that restraints, once hung from hooks in the hallway, are gone entirely. And in the attic, someone has started planting things in cracked teacups. Beans, mint, one tiny tomato. Because why not? Hope doesn't arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it shows up in dirt and string and a bit of sunlight through a rotting beam. Whitlow spends more time asleep now. He doesn't talk much, but on good days he hums. The melody isn't recognizable, but Rose hums it too. In the chapel, someone replaces the last broken window with a piece of coloured glass. It's blue, bright as ocean, and the girl with the poem in her hand begins writing her own. And you don't go back, not to the building, but you carry it all. The rusted spoons, the scratched out names, the map etched in your ribs. And late one evening, as rain taps the eaves above your rented flat, you sit by the fire and unfold a letter sent to no one. Inside is only one line. "We kept the door open, just in case." You don't cry. Not this time. You just smile, because they're still inside, but no longer forgotten, no longer erased, just waiting. Like a candle, burning low, but steady. Because someone might need the light. The storm has passed now. The doors are no longer locked. Not in your mind, not in theirs. The corridors are quiet, not from fear, but from rest. The kind of stillness that only follows after truth has finally been spoken aloud.